Okay, hi everyone. Here with a little educational video for you about recovery. So recovery is something that I've been asked about a few times. I've had quite a few detailed conversations with some mountain bikers recently. They've been kind enough to let me chat with them on some Zoom calls. And recovery is something that comes up again and again. So I just wanted to sort of do a little bit of a dive into what we know about recovery, what we know works, and what we know doesn't work, and what there may be some evidence to support the use of as well. So first of all, I've got a nice little analogy that I like to use for when I'm talking about recovery. And it's basically a bathtub. And so what we have here is we've got our bathtub, okay, filling up with water, and here is our drain. Okay, that drain there is your recovery capacity, and the water represents fatigue that's building up. And should we start to fill up our bathtub too much and it starts to overflow, that would start to represent probably a plateau and even a reversal in performance gains. So you might actually start to get slower or weaker because you're simply not recovering from your training. So what's filling up here? Well, these are our stressors, okay? Things that add fatigue. And to be quite honest, these could be physical stressors as well as psychological stressors. Ultimately, stress is stress. And these could be things like worries. Maybe you've got a family member who's unwell. Maybe you've got financial worries. Maybe you're under a lot of pressure at work. This also will be your training. Your training will cause fatigue. Okay? Any form of training, if it's sufficiently stimulative to cause you to get fitter and stronger, it is also going to be adding fatigue. Okay? It's just unavoidable if you're training with any sort of intensity. It could be work. If you're having to work long hours, then that is going to eat into your recovery capability. Not having much downtime, not having much time to unwind, relax. So yes, stress is stress, whether it's physical or psychological, it all contributes to the fatigue. Okay, so let's have a look at the things that we know can definitely really move the needle here and really change the size of this recovery drain. Okay, first of all, nutrition. Okay, so adequate calorie intake that, number one, will actually support quality training sessions, but also recovering from training is a metabolically demanding process. Okay, there's muscle repair, tendon repair, all sorts of waste products need cleaning up, and this requires adequate food intake. Now, that's not to say that you can't recover from training if you're in a calorie deficit. That means you're deliberately eating less than your body requires on a daily basis. But it might mean that your recovery capacity is slightly less if you're in a calorie deficit. Okay. Within that nutrition bit here, okay, yes, adequate carbohydrate intake, but that's more to do with fueling quality training sessions. Adequate intake of fat, but again, that's more to just maintain proper hormone function. And protein, okay? Protein really is going to be the kind of building blocks of any sort of muscular recovery. So making sure that you're getting a decent portion of protein with all of your meals. And I think for a mountain biker, something like 1.4, 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight would represent a pretty decent protein intake. And if you're training with weights 2 or 3 times a week, then it's perfectly reasonable to take that up to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight as well. So for instance, I'm approximately 80 kilos, so that would mean 160 grams of protein for me. Okay, and that should ideally come from a range of protein sources. It's okay for some of it to come from plant sources. If you are using plant sources, then make sure that you're still getting all the complete proteins. So using soya is great because it is a complete protein source. It has all the essential amino acids, and I think it has a decent amount of leucine in as well, which means that it's going to do a pretty good job. If you're eating a fairly omnivorous diet, which means you've got dairy, eggs, meat, fish in there as well, then you are going to be getting really good quality protein on a regular basis. Right, sleep. Okay, I have 2 young children. This is the trickiest one for me, and I do have quite a tendency to wake up pretty early and also be quite a light sleeper in the hours past midnight. We know that sleep has huge effects on our ability to recover from training, and for me, a bad night's sleep, I know, can then really affect my ability to recover, and I can, if I'm not careful, start to feel like I'm spilling over. Workouts can become a bit tough, and I know that I have to try and get back into a sleep groove there. Okay, also, although this doesn't directly relate to this, your training load being kept manageable. I think when a lot of people talk about recovery from training, it's because maybe they're kind of a weekend warrior. They get out and they ride their mountain bike really hard once a week, and that just means that they're maybe not as conditioned as they would like to be, and so for them it represents a huge spike on a weekly or fortnightly basis in their training load, and the body will find it perhaps difficult to recover from because it's not habituated to that kind of intensity and duration of training on a regular basis as well. Add to that the fact that maybe if you are training in the gym, you're doing some resistance training, doing some intervals, then again, how many sets you do, how long those training sessions are, whether you're taking those sets to failure perhaps, these things can all have an effect on how well you will recover from that training. So it's worth thinking about that. It's not necessarily that you're unable to recover, it might be that you're overdoing it and that your recovery capacity is just fine, but you're filling these up too quickly. It's also worth pointing out that if you are wanting to continue training and one of these things, extra worries in your life, extra work stress, starts to mean that this sort of tap starts to pour water into the bathtub faster, then it's worth looking at ways that you can start to close off these taps a little bit more so that overall your recovery capacity isn't overwhelmed. Okay, right. Other things that might work or don't work. Okay, so 3 things that come up fairly often. Massage, okay, and stretching, I should point out as well. Branched chain amino acids and other fancy supplements too, and ice baths. Okay, first of all, massage. Overall, there was a recent meta-analysis done in 2020 that indicated that there does seem to be some evidence for a positive effect when it comes to recovery in terms of strength performance and endurance performance for massage, but the picture isn't clear, and it's also worth pointing out that there's a lack of long-term studies. Not have a positive effect on actually getting fitter, getting stronger. Okay, there's really no evidence to indicate that. More on that idea later. Branched chain amino acids. Okay, the fitness industry will try and sell you branched chain amino acids. They cost quite a lot for a gram of protein. The branched chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. These branched chain amino acids are present in everyday food and everyday complete protein sources, and the evidence really seems to strongly indicate that you're better off just eating everyday complete protein sources. There is no benefit to taking branched chain amino acids for the general population looking to recover from training. Okay, so I really don't think you should waste your money on branched chain amino acids. Ice baths. Okay, so double-edged sword here. Ice baths do work. They do help you recover from training. They help you recover in terms of performance and also in perception of delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, but they slow your gains in terms of endurance performance and strength gains and muscle gains. Okay, so they bring you back up to baseline more quickly, but they attenuate the adaptation process. They blunt adaptations. Basically, they get rid of inflammation. Or reduce the effect of inflammation, I should say. So Mother Nature's pretty smart. After a training session, you will experience inflammation, but it's there for a purpose. Okay, your body knows that the inflammation process is part of a bigger picture of recovery and adaptation. And so blunting the inflammation process by taking ice baths or taking ibuprofen means that you are going to take the edge off your body's ability to adapt. And now there is a large body of research saying that this slows down gains in terms of endurance performance, muscle growth, and strength performance. So ice baths have their place in certain settings. Let's say you're doing a week in the Alps and you're mountain biking a lot. Maybe you're doing a lot of downhill stuff, your forearms and shoulders are giving up. Maybe you're doing a lot of pedaling up hills and your legs just hate it. Maybe you're doing some sort of tournament in a sport, which means that you have to be fresh for the next day. Then you should already be in pretty good shape. And so using ice baths is a really, really good idea. But if you're in sort of your off season, or you're just a general sort of weekend warrior looking to get fitter, then ice baths, I really wouldn't bother. Okay, I've messed around with these myself and yeah, they do work, but it's not worth using if you're looking to get stronger and fitter over a long period of time. Okay, so I hope that answers a lot of questions that people might have about recovery. I appreciate I've rabbited on for about 12 minutes now, so I'm going to leave that with you. Ciao.